Thank you so much for watching me again, and tuning in and subscribing. This video is the comparison between what the Holley Sniper EFI did versus the Demon carburetor. I'm going to go ahead and save you the suspense, but I will give you as many details as I can throughout this video. And if you're new to my channel and subscription, like your first time you've watched it, Friday is usually over something that has gone on with the truck or whatever, or it could be the Camaro. It's just racing stuff in general. Sundays are more heavy technical stuff, and Wednesday video usually just about product review about something I ported or something that's coming to the shop. Anyway, let's get to it. The Carb beat the Holley Sniper EFI, and I'm going to try to give you reasons why. And I have nothing against either one. Matter of fact, what you can't see is the Sniper's back on because I sent the carburetor off. But I'll get to all this stuff. So just to give you an idea, I'll just go ahead and give you the results, but I'm going to show you, let you see videos and everything else to go with it, and I'll talk about it as much as I can. The fastest it went with the Sniper EFI, and it made 4 passes the last time it was out. So made 4 passes with the Sniper EFI, 4 passes with the Demon carburetor, and the fastest with the Sniper was the last pass, and it was 11:42 at 120 and some change. The fastest pass with the carburetor was 11:28 at 121 and some change. Now that looks like, well, of course that's more than 1/10 it gained, okay? Which is, considering just changing that one thing to gain that much, that's pretty good. But if you look at the mile an hour, it looks like it only gained, maybe 1 mile an hour. Except for part of this that's different is when the EFI went up, with the Sniper EFI we went out, the air was better by about 1,000 feet. The air was much worse when we took out with the carburetor, and it still went faster. So there's your results in case you're wondering. But now let's just go through it, and we'll look at videos and stuff about it and everything else. Before I do, because I know I'm going to get people asking comments about what Sniper do you have. The one that's on here is, this is the Holley Sniper Stealth, Holley Super Sniper Stealth 650. Now, a lot of people don't know all the things about the Sniper, so I'll try to give you a little bit of information. The Stealth, all it really is it makes it look just like a carburetor, which I kind of liked because I have no idea why they made the Sniper look so disgusting like a box. However, that's aesthetics. The Stealth I liked really because the biggest reason, besides it looking like a carburetor, is it flowed more air. If you get the regular Sniper, not the Stealth, but the regular Sniper, it's only rated at 670 CFM. The Stealth is rated at 870 CFM, so it flows more air. Now when I dynoed this engine, I dynoed it with the Demon 1000 CFM carburetor. Before you think, well, you had it well tuned for that engine. Unfortunately, when I dynoed with the Demon, like the engine dyno, when I dynoed it with the Demon, I had used that Demon carburetor on other engines on the dyno since, and because of that, I didn't save the notes for what was jetting and everything else with it whenever it was dynoed with this engine, because I knew the Sniper was going on. So it wasn't perfectly tuned, the Demon. But anyway, back to this. So even though it's this Holley Sniper Stealth 650, it's not 650 CFM, it's 870 CFM. It's 650 horsepower they rated at. And that's based off of the injectors and CFM of the throttle body, and that's how they rate their horsepowers. Now the reason why it's super is because it's got more inputs and outputs. So if you looked at say the regular Sniper versus the Super Sniper, what you would see is the Super Sniper has more inputs and outputs, which I use, one for fuel pressure and the other one for oil pressure. But you would use it, it's it's better for power adder, because you might use those inputs and outputs for different things, like maybe a nitrous soda activation, something to do with turbochargers, a bunch of other stuff that I'm not using. However, if you looked at the two, whether it be the Super Sniper Stealth or just the Sniper Stealth, the throttle body itself is the same. Now they do make an 8 injector version. This is only the 4 injector version, but that's about the only difference. Now they do make an X-Flow, and it'd be tempted to try that one out, except for I don't have one. And if Holley wants to send me one, I'll happily test it on there, because one of the things that may have made the difference in the ET is the Sniper is 870 CFM. The Demon was 1000 CFM. So yeah, it had a bigger CFM rating. Now, that actually opened up a whole can of worms and internet myth when it comes to that carburetor being 1,000 CFM, because this is a 355 cubic inch engine. If you were reading online, you would never put 1,000 CFM carburetor on that engine. Because I used to believe that things too until I tested, and that's the reason why you test. They would say you just need a 750. If you put 1,000 CFM, it's not responsive, it doesn't take off well. I have tried on other 350s, the same cubic, matter of fact, the same short block actually, using smaller CFM carburetors, and it went slower, it responded worse, it was never faster, okay? That's a big deal. So even if it's 1,000 CFM, it's faster. You can talk about responsiveness all you want. The ET slip kind of tells it. Now, the reason why I bring up the CFM, because some may argue that the reason why the carburetor might have been better is because of the CFM rating. However, here's another thing to think of with the CFM rating itself. On the dyno, we put a air bonnet that sits on top of the carburetor, much like this does, and it actually measures the amount of air that's going into the engine when it's on the dyno. And I can assure you, and I couldn't find a sheet real quick, I can assure you the engine did not pull 1,000 CFM. In other words, it wasn't using the full capacity of the carburetor. And if I remember right, it was only like 825 CFM that the hat said. So if you're looking at that, you'd be like, well, you should have just put an 850 on it, you've been good to go. I'm telling you, I've done an 850 versus 1,000. 1,000 still runs faster, even though it isn't pulling, doesn't need all that at CFM. It probably has something to do with the pumping losses. That's the amount of power that the engine takes to breathe in the air. However, I'm saying that just because I don't want you thinking, well, if you'd had 1,000 CFM throttle body, would it make a bigger difference? Maybe, but the biggest throttle body one that they made for a 4150 is that X-Flow. Now it's only rated at 900 CFM, so it's only 30 CFM more rated than this, but it does have bigger injectors in case you wanted to go to like bigger power adder. I don't have it, so I didn't get a chance to test it. If Holley wants to send me one, I'll back it with the carburetor versus that, because it literally takes me about 20 minutes to make the change. Anyway, that's what it did. If you're wondering why I believe, wait till the end of the video, because I know most of you don't watch the full video, and that's just nature of the beast. I don't either sometimes. Anyway, here's what I want to talk about first about the track experience itself. It was like 94, 95 degrees, which doesn't sound that hot. The humidity was like 74%. Hot. I would have liked to have made more runs because I honestly think the truck actually could have gone faster. But I couldn't because this is part of it too. It may have affected some of the track times with the carburetor itself, is they had 4 oil downs. So I got there at 6:30, 7 o'clock. Got there at 7 o'clock, stayed till 11. So 4 hours, made 4 passes. They had 4 oil downs. Because of that, I couldn't make it. There were several times where I was ready to go, but the track was not ready to go. So because of that, one could argue, well, the track wasn't as good because for sure the prep wasn't as nice after the 3rd oil down, or the 2nd one. And I always stayed in the same lane. For whatever reason, that must have been the lane that everybody kept blowing up in either. However, I can't really blame it on that, okay? So the 4 runs, if you go through the times, the first one was 11:92, and it sounds horrible, but I knew it had power there because of the power. And I won't post up that video of that, but it ran 11:92, but it was hopping the wheel. And I had put the tires, these are Nittos, I put them at 22 pounds, and I had the shocks like they should be, and it was hopping, the tires were hopping off the line. And it still ran 11:92 at 1:19, and that's when I knew the carburetor was better, right off, even though the times weren't faster at all, or even close. Because the mile an hour was almost 1 mile an hour than most of the passes with the Sniper. If you look at the Sniper, its best run had 120 mile an hour, but the rest were like 118, 117, 116, one of them. Anyway, they were in that range, so you really, 118 was about it. It was 1 mile an hour faster in crappier weather on and not hooking up. So that was the first pass. Now this next one, hopefully you'll see, I can't remember if I'm gonna put this in or not. The next pass, it went 11:62 because of me. When the times aren't as fast, it has very little to do so much with the truck as it does with me. After the first one blowing off its tires, what we did next is I lowered the tire pressure on the rear down to 19. and I also tried to leave softer. So it's foot brake. So I eased into the gas and it took off. That one ran 1160, 201.20 and some change. So now it's matching the mile an hour of the Sniper and 1,000 foot horse air. The AT is still not matching it, but it's getting closer. The next pass was 1144, and then it did an 1142, and then the final pass was 1128. Now you get to see some videos and watch how it went about its way, but I will say I tried some different stuff, and I don't want to mess you up too much with this, but I'm gonna tell you on the third run, we thought we'd get a little creative. And I'm telling you this because if you watch through the video, I want to give you something for watching, some little information you might use. As you know, I had the Sniper, if you watch my previous video, the Sniper was monitoring the fuel. All it does was monitor the O2. Anyway, I did a data log and I found out it was like running in 13.2 range. And so I said, well, I'm going to add some jet. And just because the primary is easier to get to, I changed the primary jets and went from 83 to 85. But at the same time, the guy that was with me is like, you should take off this air cleaner. I bet that that's making it run worse. And it kind of sounded correct, so I was like, well, it's a heat sink. It's probably absorbing all the heat that's there. So I took off this air cleaner. And this is just you can get it from Holley, but this is a Demon air cleaner. That next pass, it ran the second quickest time at like 1144, but the mile an hour was way off. So the previous run before that had gone 120 mile an hour. The next run, it went 116. So by taking off the air cleaner, even though I went richer on the jets, it caused it to go way richer, and the mile an hour dropped off 4 mile an hour. So what I'm trying to say, if you look at the 8th mile time, the 60 foot was better, everything else was better, up until really the car gets more speed behind it. I think it's throwing air here without the air cleaner on it, and it's messing up the way the air enters the carburetor. But I can tell you, taking this off, you'll lose 4 mile an hour. So who knows what that pass might have been. It might have been in like 1120 or so if the air cleaner had been on. So anyway, let's get to some the videos, and then I'll do some more talking later on if I haven't already lost you yet. Thanks for watching. But anyway, here's some videos. Okay, now this is the last run, just to give you an idea of what changed to make it go. Because for the most part, remember the best that the Sniper did was 1142, and it did it one time. The truck had already gone at 1144, 1142, so it's matched its times, but I knew it needed more. Because of the oil downs, and I was so frustrated, usually I only change one thing at a time, which is what you're kind of supposed to do when you go to the track, so you can see if it's working or not. I knew I was going to get one more run, because by the time I got up there, it was 10:57. They closed at 11. If there's someone who holds the track down, which someone did right after, it's over. So you got one shot. So I'm just like, kitchen sink it is. So I would say kitchen sink, but pretty close to it. What I did was I went back to the jetting that was in it before. So because I just gotten off taking the air cleaner off, and I actually thought maybe the engine's hurt or something. To lose 4 mile an hour, usually that's a sign you've lost power. So that's not good. So I put the air cleaner back on, I put the jets back where it was, and then I was like, you know what, let's just mess with some stuff. So I went into the ignition box. Now the Holley Sniper is not controlling any of the ignition. Remember, it's all done by the MSD 6AL2 programmable. I went into the ignition box and changed 2 things. The 2 things I changed was, one, it always seems to hit the rev limiter, and I try to stay off of it. On the best sniper run, I stayed off the rev limiter. And so far on the carburetor, because it really does feel like it pulls harder all the way through, especially at the big end, it gets in the rev limiter. So I'm shifting, and it takes a while for it to shift, and then it's banging the rev limiter by the time it hits, which really throws off that it's gaining off the shift. Anyway, I went into the ignition box and changed the rev limit. So before it was set at 7,800. Except for, I'm going to warn you, if you've got an MSD box, the rev limiter seems to always kick in before then. So in this case, it kept kicking in like at 75 or something. So I raised it up 100 RPM to 7,900 RPM. The second thing I did was, the timing on the engine's at 35 degrees total. But the way that the curve's in is, I have it giving it peak at idle, and then about 1,800 it starts dropping back down, and it's around 33, and then it ramps up slowly to about 61, and then it stays about 34 degrees from 61 to 65, and then usually ramps back up to 35 all the way out. This time, all I did, and I'm telling you this because the only thing that was changed as far as the ignition curve was above 6,500, I added 1 more degree of timing. Because I read the plugs, they look like they could probably take 1 more. I know on the dyno we only did 35, we never saw much change with 36, but you know, let's go. So from 6,500 on, I gave it 1 more degree of timing. So below that, the max it could have was 35. But like I just told you with the curve, it didn't really. Above it, above 6,500, 36 degrees. Now the gas that's in it, in case you're wondering, this thing's almost 12 to 1 compression ratio, by the way. It's like 11:9. The gas that's in it's 91 octane pure gas from Casey's down the road. And if you watch my other video, you might have saw me driving. That's where I was going. That's the only fuel that's ran in it. So those two, so carburetor jet back to where it was, air cleaner back on, raised the ignition timing, raised the rev limiter, and the last thing, and this was probably the one that probably could have made more of a difference. The tire pressure went down to 18, which that's just because it was cooling off a little. But on this side, this is the passenger side, on the cow track on this side, because I've had it on the scales, I added preload to this side on the cow track. So I had to wear the, if you know anything about cow tracks, the bar will touch on the leaf spring. That's where I'd had it all the time, where it's just touching. Now I added preload to just this side. I gave the bar 1 more turn. Now I have had the car, this on the scale, because I really, typically, and the Camaro loves this, if I put 40 pounds more weight on the rear passenger side than I do on the driver's side, the car usually hooks up better and drives straighter. It never didn't drive straight, but then again, you see the size of these front tires, it's gonna drive straight, and also it's not that fast. I don't want to think like, I am so impressed with my truck. There was a guy with, and this goes against the LS guys, there was a guy there who had a stock short block, small block Chevy. That means 350 crank block rods, pistons, and he had a set of dart heads on it, solid roller cam. He was running 1120s. So for those LS guys that think that can't be done, he did it stock bottom end. And by the way, he was out running, most of the LSs were there. And he was within my time. Now his mile an hour was way slower than mine, but his ET was pretty close. Anyway, I added more turns in there because I wanted to get more weight on this side, because the S10s are notorious for picking up the driver's side. Well, that forces all the weight there. So if you have more preload there, it tries to actually push it to this side, so hopefully it hooks up, and it did. However, that last run, which you're gonna see the video of, you could hear it hitting the rev limiter still. Like it left good, and because it must have made more power with the extra timing or whatever, it was right into the rev limiter anyway, so it didn't even matter. Especially in the 1-2 shift, it was definitely in it. Second gear also got it, and then it ran its best time. So I really think if I could have raised the rev limiter up more, or maybe if myself shifted earlier, I think it probably would have gone probably 11:22, something like that, maybe a little bit quicker. But anyway, we'll show you videos of that, and then you're all on your own. I gotta get to grinding. Thanks for watching the video. Sorry, it maybe not be what you wanted. But before I left off, there's one thing, because I don't want to forget it. My air conditioner keeps kicking on because it's hot, but I want to show you this, because I think this might have something to do with the whole sniper thing. Reason why it might be slower. Because I know the rate of 870 CFM, but I want to show you this. Let me turn off my air conditioner here. Okay, this is the other Sniper, which I've been dying to show you this, okay? This is identical to the one that's on there, except for, of course, it's got all of its pieces. All right. They may rate this at 870 CFM. I don't know if they actually flowed it from Holley to see if it actually does flow 870 CFM. Because I mentioned this. I'm gonna get this zip tie real quick. You see this ledge here that I'm hitting? That ledge, it's sharp. And I know enough about flow stuff, especially because I port heads, that when you have like any sharp edge such as that, the air hits it and actually pushes out. In other words, it's hitting this and boink, bumps out. And it does this all the way around. So it makes it, even though it might be, I think this is 1.72 diameter across, because the air is hitting this and it's racing this way, I think what's happening is actually closing the air zone down. So it makes it feel like it's got less air coming in than what it does. So even though it might be rated at 870, but hitting those ledges, I don't think it does. Now I've got a flow bench and I guess I could flow it, but I gotta make a fixture to do it. The other thing is, and I don't know why they don't do this, I'm gonna shine my light, hopefully this works. Two things at once. I'm gonna open it wide open, there you go. This is all the way, and it doesn't really quite look like the bores are perfectly aligned. And the other thing is, carburetors have learned this. I don't know why Holley hasn't learned this. You see the screws? That's one of my pet peeves. On the carburetors, for years, what guys would do is they grind down the back side of the screw that comes through the shaft, because it's not gonna weaken it, it's just blocking airflow. I have no idea why they didn't do it on these. I don't know if it's save money or whatever. Furthermore, I wanna get to this. I don't think these atomize fuel as well as a carburetor, and here's my reason for it. If you look at a carburetor, it's a Venturi, so it's big and then it shrinks down. That's where your pressure is lowest, and that helps vaporize the fuel. Okay, that's how they work. It's pretty simple. It actually sucks the fuel, but when the air gets pulled out of the, which this is not a carburetor, when the air gets pulled out of the bowl and into the booster and comes out, it's more atomized than this. Now, it's not perfectly atomized, obviously, but it's definitely more than this. Okay, this is the last thing I want to talk about. Why I think the carburetor might have done better and made more power. If you notice right here, this is the Sniper. This is the one I took the ECU off of, but it's the same one that's on the truck. This is the Stealth one. If you've got the regular Sniper, it's gonna look different. But anyway, if you notice, there's this ledge right here, and you got another ledge right there, okay? I'm sure you've seen these. I could tell you from an airflow standpoint, having a sharp ledge in here like this, the air will hit it, bounce out, and start closing the gap. So for instance, maybe they calculated the air, how much air it actually flows through it, because the throttle bores are 1.72, and they think a certain amount of air will flow through there, and that's your CFM rating. However, if I was to measure this, and I do have a flow bench, that maybe I could, I just don't have a fixture to flow it, but I could. I'm sure if they did flow it, probably what happens is, and I'm almost positive, it hits the sharp edge and the air kind of ricochets out, and we'll do that all the way around these. And when it does, it will close the airstream down, making this thing feel to the engine like it's smaller than what it is. And maybe that's part of the reason why this didn't make as much power. The other thing has to do with this. On a carburetor, it has boosters, and what happens is it's in the lowest or highest, I think it's in the spot of the Venturi where the pressure is its lowest, and that causes the fuel to get pulled in. But because of that, it has a better chance of atomizing fuel in that area. So it doesn't atomize all of it, clearly. Some can drop out. But if you look down the carburetor when it's running, for the most part, more of it is being atomized than would be these spray things. Because I thought when I first got these that the idea was, well, this will just work like an electronic carburetor. It's going to spray fuel and it'll be atomized just like the carburetor will, except for the carburetor is drawing it through a low pressure spot. And there is no low pressure spot in this because it's a straight tube for the most part. So it's straight with these notches here, okay? Which I don't know if you can see. And they're there. I would have thought Holley would have made this where it's like a Venturi, like you would have moved this up and had it where it was big, narrow, and right where it narrows down, that's where you would spray your fuel, because it would be just like the carburetor, only it would spray it and get atomized, hopefully right there, and then run to the engine and run well. That was the idea. The way that they're spraying here is more like a pump shot on the carburetor, and I can tell you not all of that's getting atomized, because if you ever rack your throttle on a carburetor, you'll know sometimes you're going to get black smoke because it's too rich, because not all of it's being perfectly atomized, or you're spraying too much. This is much like that to me. Some of you probably argue, no, that's you're looking at it wrong way. And maybe I am, but I want to point that out. The other thing is, I can't figure this out for the life of me. This is like one solid piece. There's no screws on the bottom that hold this in. There's no screws on the side. So the only thing I could think on how this works, and maybe someone will enlighten me a different way, is I think they cast it with this groove all the way around these bores. And then maybe they machine these little holes through that groove, and that's how it sprays. Maybe that's why some people get those Holleys where they get one that fills up, but the other one ain't doing nothing because it didn't get cast right and there's just a blockage there. It's not that they didn't machine it, it didn't get cast right or something. I don't know. But I guess what I'm trying to say is Holley could have designed this better to have a Venturi where it maybe have a better chance of atomizing the fuel better. Maybe. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Sorry it's so long. Well, not really. I'm sorry. I got to get to grinding, and I got a phone call coming at the same time, so I will talk to you guys later. Take care. Okay, maybe one more thing. I forgot this. I was putting it up and I noticed. I have no idea why they're still doing this. Okay, carburetor guys have figured this stuff out. You see this? We have our nice screws that hold this in there. Why is it, one, it doesn't look like it's centered. That's wide open right there. Well, maybe not. There we go. That's wide open, but it sure don't look like they're centered, wide open. And I know it's touching its groove here, as you can see. However, that's not even my beef. Do you see the back side of the screws there? Not that side, that's where you screw them in, that side. On the carburetors, years ago, we'd all shaved them down. They've been shaved down because it doesn't weaken them. We just grind off, flip over this side. We just grind off the parts here and here to where it becomes flush with the shaft. Open back up. See there, where the shaft is. So we're not grinding into the shaft, we're just grinding those down. Carburetors have been doing it for a while. Even Holley's own carburetors like that. They actually have a thinner shaft as well, so it's thinned here, and those are ground down, so they move more air. Why in the world did Holley leave it like that? You would have more airflow, by the way, if you did that. It doesn't weaken it. It's not going to fall out because you ground off stuff that's not attached to anything. Anyway, last thing. All right, got to get to grinding. See you guys later. Bye.